Good evening and welcome to Moving Forward, a production of the Bay and Grantstown Advancement Association. The principal objective of this program is to identify obstacles in the path of the development of our wonderful nation. And with the help of all of you and of course our in-studio guests, we try to address these problems with a view to reducing them, if not totally eliminating them. Now, over the last number of years, we have had a tremendous number of obstacles in the way of our national development. And one of significance was the fight to save and then protect Clifton Point. And that is what we are going to discuss this evening. And we wish to thank you for taking the time out to be with us for a few minutes. My name is Reverend C.B. Moss, host of this program, but also chair of the Coalition to Save Clifton, the organization that initiated the fight to save Clifton back in 1992. And with us are a number of prominent individuals being part of many major organizations also involved in the fight to save and protect Clifton Bay. I will start with the beautiful lady at my right, and I'm sure the others wouldn't mind.
Absolutely.
But this is Sam Duncombe, the president of Re-Earth, and she'll tell you a bit about herself very shortly. And then we have the inimitable Fred Smith. Nobody can imitate Fred Smith, the legal advisor to Save the BAYS organization. And then you have the very, very prominent Bahamian, Mr. Joe Darble, who is the chairman of Save the BAYS organization. Sam, just give our visitors just a shout out. You don't need to tell them anything about you, because who don't know about Sam Duncombe in this country? They've been under a rock somewhere.
Thank you for having me, CB. It's very good to be here.
Yeah. So we invite all of you now to just relax, and we are going to discuss the whole issue of Clifton in two basic sections, because the first phase of the saving of Clifton Bay figured prominently people like Sam Duncombe. And I remember on that Wednesday evening, the third day of February in 1999, that was the first town meeting, I think the only town meeting, they never held another one.
No.
The first town meeting that the government of the day called to inform the people about the proposed development there, which was to have been called Clifton Key. It was a high-end gated community, obviously not for locals, because the cost of just the land itself would prohibit the participation of a lot of our people. But you were at that meeting at the St. Paul School Hall, just outside of the gates of Lightfoot Key. Right. Give us your first impression.
Well, it was an amazing evening because there was standing room only in a very large hall, and everybody came there with one objective, and that was to say no to the Clifton Key development. And we spoke with one voice, and we came from every segment of society. And I could not have been a prouder Bahamian that night to see so many people standing up for the protection of a piece of land. It was a really wonderful moment.
Not only so many, but the diverse backgrounds. It was the first time that I had seen so many different people. They were there from every political organization, every sort of shade and hue of color, and they were all there either as Bahamians or as Bahamian interested people from various backgrounds. We had Jewish Bahamian, Greek Bahamians, Italian Bahamians, white Bahamians, black Bahamians, and I think that is what gave that resistance movement the powerful launch, because it was the first time that I had seen so many different groups of people in the Bahamas coming together for one objective. But what was your impression of the presentations made?
Well, I mean, you know, the presentation was what has become very standard in terms of, you know, the government introducing the developer, and the developer, you know, the first words out of his mouth were, this is going to be an environmentally sensitive development. And those have actually become, you know, warning words to us now, because we know typically it's exactly the opposite thing. And when you looked at the plan that they wanted to do with the finger canals and the high-density housing development that they wanted to golf course. It was just like, you know, what part of that is environmentally friendly? When you exclude people from a space, that is not friendly to the locals. The impact to the water table, the impact to the freshwater wetlands, the impact to the bay. It was just ongoing, the amount of issues, all of the plantation ruins that were still at Clifton. It was a ridiculous concept to think that we should just lay down and let the feeling roll all over us. And so it was an amazing evening, and it was an amazing couple of years that followed that in terms of all the different things that we did to raise people's awareness and to get people on board. And like you said, we had people from everywhere joining us for different reasons. And Clifton was great because, it appealed to the tree huggers, it appealed to the archaeological buffs, the historical people. So it captured everybody's imagination, and it was really a wonderful, wonderful movement and moment in our history.
It was, because I recall, and you may recall also, the presentation by Oscar N. Johnson. He's dead now. But it was so powerful that he inspired me. He inspired me, and he made comments that suggested to me that this is something we've got to put everything we have into. That you can't go half-stepping.
Right.
And this is why we reached out to a lot of the other entities who were there and invited them to let's get together, because it appeared as if the presentation was a fait accompli. It was done. They were just informing us.
Right.
They weren't actually inquiring of our opinion. They were informing us. And the train was up to full steam. No one entity was going to stop that. So we decided there had to have been collaboration, not only within the Bahamas, but even outside of Bahamas. And it amazed me that we had persons from Europe and other places writing letters and to the newspapers and to the government opposing such a move. And I think that energized us a lot. But Re-Earth was at the forefront. And we did a lot of things that didn't make us popular.
Not in it for popularity, right?
They called us everything. And they
the tyrannical minority.
They not only called us this, in the local general space, but in Parliament, in the House of Assembly, they ridiculed us. They said we were mercenaries and we were agents of the political opposition who were engaged in tearing down the government, that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you what, if I have not told you before, you are one tough cookie. No, you fought, and there were a lot of others, and we're going to address them a little later. But we're so grateful that the efforts of all those persons and entities succeeded in bringing a halt to that development.
Right.
And we had some international help, persons like Bobby Kennedy putting pressure on the developers from this US side. And we were delighted when in 2004, the new government decided to pass legislation to protect that place. But you will recall it was from us that the suggestion that it be a park be made.
Right.
We suggested that because people say, okay, you don't want to be a development, what do you want it to be? And I think your organization has done a lot of work in trying to advance that idea. But in 2004, the government decided to establish the land park.
Right.
At the time, we approached them to make it a land and sea park, similar to the Exumas.
It can still happen.
It will happen. It will have to happen. Because what the government said at the time, and it was reasonable, they said, look, the land is already in government's possession. We can very easily create a park on the land. But the sea is a little different because there are lots of stakeholders, the people who occupy the coast, the brewery, BEC, the residents of the area, and all that. We would have to hold discussions with them. So we said, fair enough, we'll wait. But there's a serious thing about waiting. Waiting sometimes stretches into never worry. And so for a few years we were waiting for the Sea Park now to be legislated. And before that happened, we were alarmed by a new organization called Save the Bays as to what was really going on, because unfortunately we were sort of lulled to sleep by the waiting for the Sea Park. But when Save the Bays came along, for which we are eternally grateful to them, because we didn't have the resources, financial, human, technical, and others, to uncover all of the factual information about what was going on, to convince almost any reasonable person that that site was in danger. We couldn't do that. And so we are grateful to them. And in that regard, we are going to now bring into the discussion the main man, the president, the chairman of Save the Bays. Or Fred, any one of you could tell us how you all became involved and what motivated you all to join the fight to protect Clifton.
Well, if I can begin briefly, we were absolutely admiring all along the whole project that went on in Nassau with respect to the land side of that whole beautiful area. Even though we were not personally, physically present in Nassau at the time, of course, we have a whole panorama of information that came our way. So we were attuned to every little item that took place in terms of coming to preserve that area. And when we look at it now, and we go through that particular area where the inhabitants who were there were our former brothers and sisters, we could still feel their energy and their whole presence in that particular vicinity. And so I want to absolutely salute both of you and your whole team who actually were able to carry out that incredible mission. There seem to have been so many odds against you, so many obstacles that you had to surmount, but being persistent and knowing that you had a mission, because that is a mission, and the missions are always divinely guided, and also passionately so. And so we knew that you were going to accomplish that. And then the next thing in line was the whole area of that magnificent place, where actually the one remaining public beach in the western part of Grand Bahama actually is still a public beach. And so this all ties together with respect to how we're going to preserve for future generations. And to speak more concretely to how we got involved in that, in terms of bringing legal action in a particular area in Clifton water area, I'm sure Fred Smith is the one to speak to that.
Well, thank you, Joe. And I'd like to echo Joe's salutation of both of you and all of the other environmental, social, and cultural warriors that were involved in saving a beautiful piece of New Providence. So Joe and I became involved, as well as Sam later, in Save the Bays when we were invited to join as members of the board of directors, what was then called the Coalition to Protect Clifton Bay. And it was quite a representative group of people from abroad, people from the Family Islands, and people from New Providence. And one of the remaining and continuing objectives of Save the Bays is to get the government to declare the northwestern marine protected area, which is almost a 7-mile area of reef all along the north coast of New Providence and going all around the eastern tip into the Clifton Bay area. And every time we fly from Freeport to Nassau regularly, and I'm not sure how many people from New Providence realize what a beautiful area it is on the north coast of New Providence, stretching from the east all the way to the west around the eastern tip. And so it hasn't yet been declared a marine protected area. I know the National Trust and many other organizations are promoting that, as well as the Coalition to Save Clifton. And one of the challenges that we found that faced us was the Nygaard Key development. As everybody knows, Save the Bays has been in litigation with the government and Mr. Peter Nygaard in relation to the environmentally damaging activities that were going on there. I mean, mining the coral, dredging up the grass seabed, dredging without permits, building without permits, expanding from a small little footprint of what's that coral called? You know, the very spiky coral that you walk on iron shore. It was basically iron shore, a little spit of iron shore at the end. Used to be called Sims Point. I think that's actually, it's still its legal
That's the official name, Sims Point.
So, regrettably, the activities of Mr. Nygaard, to which successive governments turned a blind eye, was damaging the environment and damaging that whole area of Clifton Bay. It was preventing the flow of sand southeasterly to replenish from the north, to replenish the Clifton Bay area, to replenish Jaws Beach, which is in the Clifton Heritage Park area. And Joe and I have visited that. We've taken land tours around the Heritage Park, and we regularly go and sample the waters there on behalf of an organization that Save the Bays is internationally aligned with, is the Waterkeeper Alliance, which was created by Bobby Kennedy quite some years ago. I think it now has 357 waterkeeper affiliates throughout the world. And its main objective is to have a drinkable, swimmable, fishable water. And when you take all of that into consideration, it really is water for humanity to be able to enjoy and prosper from. So it's been a long journey.
Yes.
And I am very proud to say that with the help of Sam, with the help of Joe, with the help of so many of our other directors, and the work of the Coalition to Save Clifton, and other, we have a number of organizations, including Re-Earth, and the National Trust, and the Clifton Heritage Authority. We have what are called community partners within Save the Bays, the coalition. It truly is a coalition. And with everybody's help, we have continued the fight for promoting regulated development, for promoting the creation of the Northwest Marine Protected Area, to fight against the trespassing and illegal seizure of Crown land, to promote an Environmental Protection Act, and to promote a Freedom of Information Act. I mean, all of these are key features to a transparent, accountable, modern society that all of us would like to see and that we continue to work for.
Well, what a wonderful introduction. We're going to have a very short break. We're going to be back and really get into the discussion of what's going to happen going forward. Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back.
Only love can save us now. Only love.
Welcome back, folks. Just before the break, we were talking about the involvement of Save the Bays in the fight to protect Clifton Bay for the use of all Bahamians and visitors alike into perpetuity, and that is very important. But let me say that this is a very bittersweet time for us, that is of the coalition, because we're now celebrating our 20th anniversary, 20 years in the fight. And we have a number of events scheduled to ensure that those persons who participated in the fight recognize that that fight was brutal and that we greatly appreciate all of their contributions. In that connection, we're having a reception on Wednesday of this week when all of those warriors will be properly identified and awarded. Unfortunately, as in the case of most battles, some do not make it to the victory line. A few of them fell along the way, and of course their families would be there to receive posthumously their awards. But it's bittersweet because we are delighted with the results to date, and we are awaiting the final act by the government to insist that those man-made structures around that area be removed, because we're already beginning to see some improvement. You saw some improvement down there, Joe.
Yes, CB. Waterkeeper Bahamas, we take regular samples of water from there under direction of Rashima Ingram, who is the executive of Waterkeeper Bahamas. And we were there actually earlier this afternoon. And as you know, that is the only, as I said before, public beach for Bahamians in the western part of New Providence. And in 2004, I remember specifically being at that area, the southwestern point of that whole bay area, and that was replenished with sand. But when all of the diversion was created by that unpermitted development called Nygad Key, all of the sand began to be transported into his particular property. But now that the court actions, which has come about and stopped that movement, I see now that the sand is beginning to migrate again back into that particular area, which is fundamental for the recreation of our Bahamian people. There is so little left of so much in Nassau.
That's right.
That can be enjoyed by the regular citizens who can go on any day and go into the waters. There are some places in the government, I salute them for saving them along the northern part of Nassau. But in that specific area, where you would like to enjoy a long ride to get there, to be picnic in a beautiful setting like the heritage there, it is necessary that we transform that into a special protected area for all generations.
And so
to
the
come.
sand is coming back.
The sand is coming back, and I think it's due to the fact that with this lawyer and winning so many cases to stop the diversion that was taking place, now we see the sand moving as it usually does. Hurricanes may move it again, but it will come back very quickly.
To which we can only say, praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord, because that site is precious to Bahamians, and we would like to see it improve to its maximum potential. And we're going to be looking forward to that. But we want to thank Fred. I mean, I know I don't want to sound gratuitous to him, but we want to thank Fred and his team for launching the number of court actions, which basically stopped the progression of the desecration of that area. I'm convinced of that. And we're only waiting for the government to enforce their directive to the developers to remove those contraptions. Because like you said, once those contraptions are removed, the sand is going to move on the tide and it's going to carry it wherever it wishes. And we can see that place blossoming and blooming. But I'll tell you, I said before the break it was bittersweet. It really was, because we took a bruising. Poor Sam. We took a bruising, and I don't want to gloss over that because it's important. It's important for us to take a victory lap, so to speak. It's important for us to say, we told you so. Because the decision by the courts, the directives by the government, basically just reinforce what we've been saying all along, that those contraptions not only were illegal, but they were contributing to the degradation of the area. And so we were right. And I think that's what all of us should be. If you can reach your back a little bit, pat yourself on the back.
I'll pat yours.
And well, let me pat your back and you pat my back, because The beating that we took, we are certainly entitled to at least one pat on the back now that we have been proven right.
Yes.
I know Paul Fred, oh Lord, they were calling him everything in the world, and none of them complimentary.
No.
None of them complimentary. As we sought to fight in our own various ways. You were fighting in your way, and we were fighting in our way, but they had the brunt of it over the last few years in the courts. Tell us about that experience, Fred.
Oh, well,
He had fun. What are you talking about?
none of us, I mean, Sam was a witness in a number of the cases, Joe was a witness in a number of the cases, and I don't think any of us ever appreciated that when we were tackling a private citizen, Mr. Peter Nygaard, and his illegal activities, that the full weight of an entire government would be set upon us to terrorize us and to call us terrorists and money launderers and traitors to the cause and unpatriotic, and to have Parliament itself pass a resolution to seek to hold the judge of the Supreme Court, Ferran Bethel, the lawyer, myself, and other lawyers. I mean, we had a whole team of lawyers, Dawson Malone, Akira Martin, Martin Lundy, Crispin. I mean, we've generated an entire stable of lawyers who have learned to fight for the environment. And during this time as well, we were able to act for Re-Earth in the Blackbeard's Key litigation to stop the illegal dolphin experience that's going on there. I know Sam is anxious for us to continue. We got a judgment, but despite getting a judgment, the cruise line and the government continue to operate.
Yeah, we
the
talk
illegal
about following
facility.
the rule of law, but it doesn't actually translate into following the rule of law.
And that was the problem at Nygaard Key. And as I was saying, the full brunt of an entire government was thrust against us when we started going against someone who was fundamentally their main financier in the 2012 election. I mean, I had no idea of this. And in 2010, the previous F&M government made a decision and directed Mr. Nygaard to remove all of the illegal structures on the north, the eastern tip, and the south section. And they even got quotes of, I think, nearly $3 million for independent companies to come and remove it. The 2012 election took place before they pursued that. And for 5 years, the PLP government did nothing to enforce the law. And consequently, Mr. Nygaard was untouchable, except through the judicial process. And what I think Save the Bays has done in the fight for, the BEC, against the BEC power plant in Wilson City, in the Blackbeard's Key case, in Little Harbor, in many of the cases that we have been doing, we have been emboldening the Supreme Court to find really its voice in defending environmental rights, which didn't exist. I mean, we started this fight in Guanakee back in 2009, 2000.
No.
Before that.
Before that.
Five,
2004 and 5.
4 and 5.
So, I mean, we have been Save the Bays, the legal team that I am thankfully involved with, other environmental warriors, yourself included, throughout the Bahamas, have been developing respect for the rule of law. It's not always enforced, but it's finding a voice through the courts. And one of the things that I am most proud of is that we were able to weather the storm. And despite all the attacks by cabinet ministers, entire government.
And in some
Junkanoo
cases,
groups.
Junkanoo groups.
and in some cases, common criminals.
And what I was just going to say that, we still have, a case against Mr. Nygaard and Mr. Codesmith for threats of harm and in relation to Mr. Nygaard, a murder for hire plot case. You're a plaintiff, I'm a plaintiff, Joe's a plaintiff, Romy Ferreira, the Minister of the Environment, and I believe there's one other person. Oh, Louis Bacon, that's right. All of us were targets, and we feared for our lives. And to this day, there is continuing anxiety to a number of us, including myself,
Yeah.
because we fear ongoing targeting.
Well, let me say we're smiling now because sometimes when you come to a successful conclusion, it does sort of wipe away a lot of the pain that you experience along the way. But at one point back there, it was really traumatic.
It was.
Because it got very personal.
Yes.
In my personal case, my office was broken into 4 times. As a matter of fact, somebody was in prison for that. My email account was hacked, and
As were ours, as you
yeah,
know.
that's right. And also, I became so paranoid. I suspected, with I suppose good reason, that I was being followed at nights by suspicious vehicles. I would take evasive action, and this went on for months and months. And you'll recall, my vehicle was firebombed.
Correct.
And all of these incidents are in the annals of the Royal Bahamas Police Force.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they arrested someone for the hacking of the computer, but like everything else, nothing.
But can you
came of
imagine
it.
having demonstrations, sometimes with thousands of people running up and down Bay Street, and a Junkanoo at Christmas and New Year, making the vilest accusations against Joe,
Yes.
against Diane Phillips, against myself, against you. I don't think anybody ever targeted you.
She's
Because
pretty
she had
young
such a
lady, and
smile.
Such a beautiful lady. Such a beautiful lady.
But many of us were eviscerated nationally and internationally, to the extent that we had to go to Washington and present a case to the Organization of American States, the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, that conducted hearings and actually delivered a judgment against the government of the Bahamas and their failure to take preventative measures to protect our collective safety.
Well, I don't know if I've ever publicly thanked Save the Bays and you for your offer to include me in your legal action against those who sought to harm us. But you remember back there, after all of these attacks, somebody acknowledged that they were paid by certain parties to carry out these attacks. And even though the coalition was not a part of Save the Bays, I was not associated with Save the Bays. We were just fighting the same battle. And what is the old adage? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And once you all decided to take legal action, I was approached by, I think, your lawyer or you, to include myself in the sort of class action suit as I saw it. Well, I was happy because knowing the legal system in this country, you better have a lot of money if you're going to take any action, because they're going to frustrate you by appealing everything, and I had no resources for that kind of battle. And so I gratefully accepted the offer to be covered. Now I just hope you bring the conclusion, like you are waiting for conclusion, of that particular matter.
We
because
all are.
while it was good for those who would take such heinous actions, while it was good to know that I was being represented by top-notch people, but it's time they pay the price. You just don't threaten people and try to, if not destroy them, certainly intimidate them, and just walk away. So I am, at this time, like Sam, asking that we just put some more steam behind the effort to bring this to a conclusion.
Yes.
But I am grateful. That's what I want to say.
Let me just mention here Reverend CB, we actually were saved not only by our legal team, but by the Supreme Courts in this country.
Yes.
Like Fred said, they began to recognize that there is a path that we can follow in order to protect individuals and protect individuals' rights to land and sea. And so I think we owe a great debt of gratitude to them for actually protecting our constitutional rights. And I think that's why we survived, because even though we were intimidated, we were not really afraid, because we could have been assassinated at any one point in time, and they were intending to do that on many occasions. But nonetheless, we persisted because we had confidence in the courts in our land.
Well, your actions really constitutes a major contribution to the advancement of justice in this country. And it has emboldened people now to rely on the courts, because there were some serious decisions they made in your favor.
Yes.
But it was in accordance with the law of the land.
That's right.
And that is very, very good, because what it did, it deepened the respect for our legal institutions. And I think going forward, that's going to all go well for us. Folks, we're going to be back for our final segment after this short break. Don't go away.
Only love can save us now. Only love.
Welcome back, folks. And if you've just joined us, you are watching Moving Forward, the program that is designed to help to address the obstacles that impede our progress. We live in a beautiful country.
Oh, we do.
And sometimes we wonder why some of these problems are just not pushed aside by those who are able to. And as I listen to all of you talk about the revival, the reinvigorating of Clifton Point, I am so excited, because you have some ideas of what should happen out there.
Well, first of all, I think that the marine protected area is not large enough. Mm-hmm. It needs to encompass the southern area, Adelaide Creek, Quarry Sound, all the Coral Harbour Flats, because those are the areas that actually feed the other areas with fish. And I've been saying that for years, and said it to the National Trust, I've said it to the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. But it needs to be included. And in terms of, when we look at, what's been going on with Nygaard Key and the fact that there's a warrant out for his arrest, correct?
Correct.
And essentially he keeps laughing in the court's face, is what it seems like. I think the government should acquire his land, and we should turn it into a dolphin sanctuary. We can remove the dolphins that are illegally held at Blackbeard's Key and put them there.
What a beautiful idea. Maybe that should,
And a dog
we
sanctuary.
should add that to the fight.
And the peacocks.
Yes.
And everybody could hang together. But no, seriously though, I mean, what I suppose when you talk about bittersweet, what is bittersweet for me is, 20 years ago, we stood in that hall, we screamed for a national development plan, we screamed for transparency. Everybody was like, we've had enough. And here it is, 20 years later, we have no transparency. We have a development plan that's in the works, but nothing concrete. We have another, I think it's 20 or 40 protected marine areas that need to be ascended, whatever the correct terminology is, to actually put them on the map as areas that are protected in the Bahamas. We need to be doing that. Why are we still fighting with government over developments? Why is there
Or
still
freedom
no
of information.
transparency?
No freedom of information.
No, I mean, freedom of information, yes, but the point is that if we knew what was happening from the get-go, if the government would say, okay, so Carnival has come and said this to us, Disney has come and said this to us, and we could sit down and we say, bad place, maybe so, can we fix this? Let's get in we've been asking for over 20 years, we want a seat at the table. We want to be able to bring our passion and our expertise and our, you know, years and years, our collective years of study on the environment, on human rights, on animal rights, and let's make the country better. Instead of just making it a slogan, it's better in the Bahamas. Where is it better in the Bahamas? And I don't mean to make this a negative issue, but 20 years later, we're still asking for the same things, and it's very distressing.
Well, let me add to that. 43 years later,
I'm just talking from the Clifton point.
From
I'm
Clifton
going
point
to
of
add a human rights element to this. Joe and I have been, you know, fighting for human rights for decades through the Grand Bahama Human Rights Association. And our segue into Save the Bays was really from you know, working in the environmental issues in Grand Bahama, out in the industrial area where all the schools were. And so, you know, environmental rights are, to us, a basic human right. And, you know, we have animal rights issues. And, you know, protecting the environment has all kinds of beneficial consequences. It doesn't mean that we stop development. It doesn't mean that we're irrational. What it means is that we want a seat at the table. And we understand that people need jobs. We understand that there must still be opportunities commercially. But it should be at our pace and our choosing, as Sam says, locations. It's not every piece of beautiful virgin territory that a developer from abroad identifies that should be hijacked from the Bahamas.
And from the use of Bahamians and even our visitors, our guests. You know, I find the idea of the government acquiring Sims Point very appealing.
Actually, it is.
It is. Sims Point, that was the portion that was acquired by Mr. Nygaard, constituted what, 84,
just
somewhere about
3.1 acres in 1984.
Yeah, 84, and it was expanded into 6+ acres.
6.7 acres.
Well, as you may recall, I don't know if you are aware, but the coalition went there and we took possession of the accreted land, which we felt was Crown land.
You planted,
our
national flag.
Flag there. And I am considering now.
Occupy Nygaard Bay.
And so here, I may need your professional legal advice on whether we just go back and set up shop on the Crown land, which belongs to us, not the legal part of the purchase.
It's disappearing. Trust me,
well, that's good.
Since the dredging has
No, but that's
stopped.
good. It's good because, as Joe
going
said,
back
then
in.
the tide will do its natural job in moving the sand around. But I like the idea of the government.
Can I make a, sorry, go ahead, I thought you'd finished.
No, I'm thinking about that right now, how we're going to just get the government to occupy it, or should we occupy it on their behalf?
We should start having parties on the beach like every other public beach.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Oh, you got me thinking.
Well, we could actually move people from Jaws Beach proper onto that point. Which
Well, we've been doing that in the past.
I mean, but not sort of recreational area there for entire day.
Well, we had a
Because that
party
way
there one time.
We could
Oh, but they threatened us, and they came out in full force. And we're going to do that this summer.
Well, you know, Bobby Kennedy, as you know, at your invitation, is actually coming to the Bahamas in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
And he is going to visit with the Human Rights Organization. He's going to come and support Save the Bays and the Waterkeeper Alliance. He'll be going to Bimini to swim along with myself and scuba dive with the Great Hammerhead Migration, which you're welcome to come.
Well,
CB. And
you know what I say? I know what I do with the fish when I get them on land. And so I have an idea what they'll do with me when they get me on. I'm not a big fan of that.
And then he's going to meet with the National Trust in the Northern Bahamas, and then he's coming to Nassau.
Oh, yes.
And you're proposing to have, you're having some activities with him around the Clifton Bay, Bay area.
Because we invited him last year, as a matter of fact, to come. Because in the early days of the fight, we invited him, as you recall, and he came. He was treated badly. And I'll just tell one brief story. We wrote the government and requested the use of the VIP lounge at the old international airport, because it's common that persons of that stature who, you know, come through the airport. You give them an opportunity to have a little press conference. We have athletes and movie stars using that facility. They didn't respond, but when his plane touched down, they locked up their VIP lounge and left the airport. And we had to hold the press conference. We had to hold a press conference in the parking lot. And we've always invited him to come back because he was a major contributor to the fight. And so on this, our 20th anniversary, we invited him to come and just celebrate with us and do all the good that he could do for us while he's here. Now,
As you know, he's a director of Save the Bays.
Oh yes, and he
has
is the
been from
international
inception
leader of the
Waterkeeper
Alliance.
Alliance. And so
he was the founder of it, and he travels from country to country to all the waterkeepers and supports their work.
perhaps we should look at being a part of that. And we would invite you all to, you know, educate us
Yes.
as to what it entails. Because in our neck of the woods, our home in Bay and Grantstown, water, potable water is still...
He's kind of coming to visit there. I
Yes,
believe,
he's
is
coming.
he?
We're going to escort him through the community because it is still an issue. Because people still have to go to the standby pipes and all
In
that
2019.
in 2019. And so we invite Save the Bays to come down to
We certainly
Bay and
will.
Grantstown and see if there's anything you can do to be of assistance. I remember an occasion when somebody else came down to Bay and Grantstown, flowing hair, shirt open, with a staff in his hand as a conquering lion, and he came to
reclaiming the
help.
lambs.
Yeah, well, that promise fell through. I know your promise wouldn't fall through when you come to help. So, Joe, let's start with you. Final words.
Well, finally, I just want to say that, you know, the mission that we're on, it is not for any profit of us individually. We have a passion. We have a love for this beautiful country that has been given to us by the divine. And this is Mother Earth. We breathe her and she breathes us back. And that's why we love her so dearly. And we want her to be preserved. We're not against development, as Fred so well established a long time ago and frequently. But we want to preserve much of this beauty for future generations. So everything that we do ties in together with the rights of humans to be part of the country that they belong to be able to live comfortably, to drink water that's clean, to swim in water that's beautiful and clear forever, and to fish there as well.
Yeah, well, we're going to give Sam the last word because Sam, while they are giants, but they're relatively new boys on the block. We've been together for 20 years in this fight. So we're going to give you the last word. Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure being on your show, Rev. And, you know, I really invite everybody to become involved, whether the environment is your issue or children are your issue. You know, if we collectively support one another, that's how we're going to make our country be what we want it to be, instead of allowing outside forces to determine our image and who we are and what we think and how we behave. You know, we're great people, and I think that we just need an opportunity to be able to show people that, you know?
Thank you, Sam, for
Oh,
all
thank
that
you.
you've done. And
Thank you,
please thank the members of your great organization, Re-Earth, for the contributions they've made over the last 20 years. Fred, Joe, thank you both and the members of your organization, Save the Bays, for your tremendous contribution. We're delighted to have had all of you on the program. Folks, you've been watching Moving Forward, and we greatly appreciate the time that you've given us, and I'm sure you enjoyed these wonderful people as I have. We're smiling now, but there were times when tears were very near to our eyes. And so thank you very much, and so until next week we say good night. God bless you.
Only love can save us now.